Hi, Thorsten. Welcome to Airhacks FM.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What was your first computer?
My first computer was an IBM 86.
Wow.
82, 86. So it was a pretty old one. So it was in 95, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I had, I think, the same one, but not from IBM. But it was 8086 chip, as I remember. So it was before Pentium and stuff.
Yeah, definitely before Pentium. It had 33 megahertz, and you could press the turbo button for 66.
Yes. And I had a small display or monitor, which was black and white. So it was a tiny one, but it was not IBM. So this is like, what I remember is an insurance company was bankrupt or something like this. And I could buy a used one. And this was a very small machine. It looked like actually a tiny, as I remember. And it was two, not hard disk, floppy disks. There was, exactly.
Yeah.
What did you do with the machine?
What did I do with the machine? So main thing was playing Gorilla. I'm not sure if you remember that.
No. What is Gorilla?
It was an MS-DOS program where two gorillas were on your screen, and you had to throw bananas at each other that explode, and you could enter the angle and the velocity of the throw and then try to hit the opponent.
Okay. It was black and white or was already in color?
It was a bit colored, I think. And the important thing was it was basic, so QBasic. And it was not compiled. So you could look at the code, and then after playing some time, it was about modifying it and seeing what line does what in the game. And
so this is how you learned programming?
That's how I started programming on myself, yeah.
Yeah, this was games as code, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so you started. You continued to modify the game, or what is the trajectory to something else than Gorillas?
Yeah, so basically it was modifying it, changing the graphics, changing some pixels, changing the blast radius of the bananas, and just figuring out what each line of the code is doing, and then getting used to it. Basically that was the start. And then writing some batch files and things, and then figuring out how this computer thing works.
Okay.
Because it was just DOS.
So you learned actually programming with the action modifying the game, or was it more like you got a rough idea what is behind? So I'm just curious, if you just look at the code and modify it, you learned something, or you were just able to modify the game?
Yeah, I think I learned how that works, what the lines are doing, how the structure works, what's happening where, how program flow, control flow works, and all these things. And in parallel to that, I was watching my dad building software, because he was at IBM and programming stuff. And so he was programming everything. So I was watching him, seeing what's going on. And
Okay. And he used BASIC back then, or?
So he used some IBM things that nobody ever is using again, and nobody else was using outside of IBM, but
like PL1, RPG, stuff like that?
No, it was, I don't know if Rex? I think it was called something.
Okay. Okay, something like this. Interesting. Yeah, okay. So you are not that interesting than the other guests, because if your dad was a software engineer, so then you start coding in one point of time, right?
Not necessarily. My brother doesn't use computers at all. So
because he didn't have a Gorilla, right? So this was.
Yeah. So he was not the computer guy, and I was the computer guy. So I always loved doing that, and then it escalated from there.
Okay, so what was the next step after Gorilla? So you started to modify another game, or you got the idea for an app or app? There was no apps, so for
there was no apps. Yeah, writing. So I got my hands on QBasic, and then writing some codes and some small programs that are doing something. And I remember one of the first things was trying to build my own security software for my computer, like a script that was running in the autoexec.bat that then you need to enter a password, and then it continued booting up the computer, which was basically useless because in hindsight, there were a million ways to circumvent it, but it was a fun thing to do.
I also did it, interestingly, just for fun. But maybe I watched some movies, and this is what they did in the movies, but I wanted to have a password. So this is actually,
Yes,
so I
exactly.
remember. This is actually great chatting with you, because this is what I remember. They wanted to have a password somewhere, but it was impossible back then to have one. Okay, so and what was your goal or idea? What you wanted to build, like, I don't know, drawing software or security software or scanning or database or what?
I don't think there was that big of a goal because I was basically 10 or 12 back then.
Mhm.
So it was just trying that out. But then I think the goal was trying to figure out how that computer stuff works and seeing the potential in this is something that could really change how our lives are. And then being on the forefront of that, like not having somebody else do all of that stuff, like really figuring out how it works and seeing that this is how things will change. So this was way before all the mobile phones and all the things, obviously. But there was this trajectory that with the internet coming, and it was like only text and using a modem, but it was like, this is something different. This is different than just having paper and pens and stuff like that. That just being on that trajectory of something is happening here.
What I remember right now is because in the science fiction movies I liked, the computers were always intelligent. So what I actually thought is that if I get a computer, I get some, almost like now, a ChatGPT, in the box. This was actually, this is what I remember now, is because I thought to know what I wanted to achieve, because what I wanted to do, implement a software which actually chats with me. And the idea was, I knew then if else. So I thought, no, if I will have enough amount of if else statements, it becomes intelligent. So this was the idea, but I was actually too lazy to implement that many if else statements. But I thought to know how to make it intelligent. I was a little bit disappointed that it was not that intelligent, but this was actually the idea about computers, like the first intelligent machine. So this was actually my goal to implement something which is more fun. So this was always curious. What was your idea? But you were more reasonable. Okay, your dad told you already.
Yeah. On the unreasonable part, I always wanted to build my own kit from Knight Rider. So
cool. Yeah,
which would be back to the intelligent machine.
Okay, so similar goals. But for me, it would be text output enough. You were more, you wanted to have okay, so you were more the Tesla guy already, right? So like, and for me, it was like chat would be enough. But okay, cool. But what was maybe the next language you learned? Because I assume with Basic you tested a lot or tested it,
Yeah, so it was Basic, QBasic. Then I went from there to Visual Basic.
Okay.
And that was so in this Microsoft way, trying to build the first applications with UIs and building like a small database to, catalog my DVDs or VHS cassettes and things like that. And at some point, I then switched to Java, but that was 10 years later, I think.
When was the Visual Basic time?
So Visual Basic was, I think, around the 2000s. So a bit before, a bit after that, I was doing Visual Basic. And building applications with Visual Basic for myself, for family, for just for fun, some things that you can click on. And the big change in Visual Basic to QBasic for me was that event-driven programming. It was not just one program. This is running from the top to the bottom. It was like, oh, you click on something and then the function is called, but on button clicked. So this was a completely different mindset of, oh, something's happening because of an event. So these triggering functions and not just running from top to bottom. And that change was one of the big things, basically like the listeners in Java. And then I think it was 2005, I started using Java at my first job I did. Well, I started university, and then I got a job next to that, and then I used Java there to build software and get into Java and all that stuff.
What's interesting is I started with Java first, and I remember during my study there was like optional class Visual Basic. It's like, hey, this would be easy, just easy going, just do it. And I couldn't get it because for me Java, I did Swing and AWT and whatever, and I could take a look at the entire code, and I had the same trouble with Visual Basic as I had with Flash back then. Because in Flash there were keyframes, and in the keyframes was the listener, and I couldn't get it. Where is the source code? And Visual Basic was also. I had a trouble, to think about how the code is spread across listeners. So I had to click there. I saw a part of the code, then another part was there, and with Java it was maybe bit messy back then, but at least everything was in one place. So I could look at the code and I was sure, everything is here. And in Flash and in Visual Basic, everything was spread out. So it was not that easy, this as I thought, the Visual Basic class. But I managed to do that at the end because I managed to do the assignment, but I was a bit disappointed that it was harder than I thought, actually. So
yeah, I totally get that. On the other hand, I think with Swing, and so I was a bit disappointed, and I kind of just click and create my UIs.
Yeah.
I had to program that stuff.
It never worked well. So the best was with NetBeans and Matisse. The problem is sometimes it got corrupted, so you had to start over. So we had actually a remedy for that by separating the view from the control, but still. It was harder than Visual Basic because I always thought Visual Basic or the other one was Delphi, that it worked perfectly well. And in Java, it never worked that well. It worked well enough if you knew what you are doing, right? You have to be strict and disciplined, and it worked perfectly. Visual Edge for Java also created really nice UIs, but without listeners. If you started to mix the UI with the business logic, it was hell on earth. But if you were strict and say, okay, I just use a visual editor to draw, the boxes, and then I put the logic somewhere else, it worked perfectly well.
So that was basically the journey to Java then for business stuff. And in university we learned Ada, but that is a language.
Okay, how you? So Ada is interesting because what I do on my slides is on my Java talks right now is there's I found a table on the internet, so a performance comparison. Which I like because Java does really well on this on this study, and Ada is before Java. So as I remember, it's like C, C++, Rust, Ada, and then Java performance-wise. So Ada is a little bit faster than Java. And what I tell the audience is, okay, if you would like to be the cool kid, forget Java and do Ada right now. But how you like Ada?
It's an interesting programming language, and it has no real-world relevance, I think. What I think Ada is a really great programming language to be your first language. Because it's very strict. So there is there's 5 ways to do something, and the compiler exactly tells you what's wrong. It even tells that, this is wrong because maybe you wanted to do that. So it has a very, very good compiler that exactly tells you what's wrong. And there's it works partially and you have no idea why. So it's very good to learn programming because it really guides you to, this is the way to do it. Then for doing something, you would obviously use another language. But I think for learning programming, Ada was a really good thing because of the strict compiler.
The PLSQL from Oracle, this stored procedure language, is inspired by Ada, or it is even more, even Ada. So I had a chat and I found out that I knew about that the PLSQL stored procedures are Ada based or even Ada syntax, which is interesting. And wasn't Ada used in defense, in US back then, right? I think it was the language. Did they have the preconditions or something like this? This was like, I would have to look it up. So I was
I don't know, remember, but there was something with defense and for Ada. Yeah,
of course.
because of the strict compiler, and it's not doing magic things.
Okay.
It's doing exactly what you tell it to do.
Okay. What were your first Java projects? 2005. It was Java 5, I guess. So you started with Java 5?
1.4.
Java 4?
It was Java 1.4.2.
Oh, this is unfortunate because you had to learn the entire XML problems. With Java 5, there was just annotation. So
then we switched to Java 5 to annotations, but it was before annotations. It was working with a small bank in Germany, in Stuttgart, and building a new core banking system.
With WebSphere, I assume. Bank.
No, it was, in this case, it was a rich client. So it was everything in the front end and then talking to a database directly.
Okay. This is actually more reasonable than you think. Even network is secure and the users are no rock. You can do this.
Yeah, the first thing was having a rich client. In the beginning, it was some Swing stuff, and then we pretty fast switched to the Eclipse platform as the host for everything. So it was an Eclipse platform client.
RCP, Rich Client Platform, Eclipse.
Yeah.
The problem with that is I had to work with many crazy architects, and they loved RCP. And they demanded from me to write as many plugins as possible, which was hell on earth, because in all the business projects, there was no idea of an extension. We had to deliver the entire software at once, and they still demanded from me to have the plugins. In one project, I said, okay, if you like to have plugins, I will charge you, 1 day per plugin as overhead. And there was a huge fight. But this was I don't know why people started to build plugins without how to call it. There was actually no concept of a plugin in business software. I only know one perfect case of an enterprise software. It was not even Eclipse. It was for satellite tracking with Swing and NetBeans. And what they did, they had, to process these satellite signals with various functions like, filtering, smoothing, or whatever. And these were plugins. So it makes perfect sense. But in all other projects, there was like, a business software, and it was always delivered at once. So I never got it, right?
Yeah. So, but it started as a Swing application and directly fed client. That was a weird time because deployments were like, oh yeah, let's patch some class files in the zip and in the jar and modify single files. And that was a weird time. And then at some point we switched to RCP in the front end and the JBoss application server as an application server that is then talking to the database.
Or was it WebSphere?
No, it was JBoss.
Oh, cool. Reasonable bank, actually. So what usually happened, people use, WebSphere, which was huge. It's booted in half an hour. And then they migrated after some pain to JBoss. So this was one of the trajectory. But JBoss could be slow, but if you're reasonable, it was actually a good server. Mm-hmm.
It was a good thing, yeah. And it was pretty fun thing to do. And then obviously at some point we got rid of JBoss because of everything happening in one server. You needed to reboot everything to deploy a single part of the application. So we went with microservices, built our own Spring-based microservices that then are talking to each other using ActiveMQ. And that was the thing. This was pre-Spring Boot, so there was no Spring Boot, so we built our own Spring Boot with all our own daemon framework, connectivity framework, and it's still in use. I just released the new version, I think, last week.
Wow, so you're working with Java. I was not aware of it.
I'm not really working with Java, but I'm still the maintainer of 2 open source projects in Java. One is the Jenkins AWS plugin, and I want to get rid of it. And the other thing is a microservice framework that is comparable to Spring Boot, but
wow, what's the name of the framework?
It's Dwallin. It's Icelandic for a dwarf because it's microservices.
Very good. So we have to make it more popular. So you have get more work. We can have a Spring Boot competitor, which is actually a good thing. So
and it has like and back then it was a lot of running with CXF, Apache CXF on as a REST framework, and doing all that things and all that integrations. It has an RPC over messaging and then all that things that are implemented.
You're crazy. So you built it yourself or with a team?
With a team, but I was at some point the main developer on that core infrastructure framework stuff, and the others in the team were building applications with it. But I was always the framework guy.
That's interesting. This is really interesting because it is actually a bold move, to create your own Spring Boot for a bank. But if you know what you're doing, absolutely possible. What's interesting was what was different to you in my trajectory, I started with Java from the beginning and 1995. And since 1997, I just work on commercial projects. And at the beginning, Java was reasonable. So, for instance, most of the configuration Java projects were written in Java. So we had DSLs, which was completely normal. And then in the year 2000, an evil book, O'Reilly book, Java and XML was released. And then everyone wanted to have XML. And this is where the deployment descriptors and all the tons of XML started. And I hated the XML because if you were in projects, you had to edit everything twice in Java code and in XML. And then we got a tool called Xdocklet, and this Xdocklet was able to generate XML out of Java classes. So I used it a lot. But this Xdocklet, I think maybe even somehow influenced the Java annotations, because in Java 5 we got the annotations and I immediately deleted all XML. So since Java 5, 2005, I think I never configured anything in XML because I didn't like that. And this is why I never used Spring, because in some project they had more XML than Java, which I couldn't understand. Why on earth is this actually appealing? So so back then you said 2005, 2006. So I used JBoss a lot without any XML. And my microservice strategy was no dependencies, very small wars. And I used the entire JBoss as microservice, which worked that well that I was absolutely not interested in. There was like these smaller Thorntail was one, Whitefly Swarm. So like smaller versions of Whitefly. I was not interested because the Whitefly booted reasonably fast with the entire thing, and if you had no dependencies, it was fast. So this was actually exact opposite architecture from yours. And what happens right now, I'm migrating all the old projects to Quarkus, basically. And the Quarkus is like JBoss on steroids. So it is, I would say, the fastest runtime on Earth right now. Micronaut is comparable. As far as I know, Quarkus is a bit faster. And the Quarkus people are obsessed about performance. So it's really incredible what they are doing. So and it works well as AWS Lambda, by the way. So all my Lambda projects are also Quarkus projects. So this is my
but I think. Oh yeah, go on.
This is interesting because you did exactly opposite to my trajectory, and both are working, right? Both approaches are working. If you would be in the middle, what some projects did, what I saw in projects A, what they did is they used JBoss and they installed in JBoss Spring. And they had both frameworks in one thing. This was the version. This is what I never got. It's like, why are you doing this? But your thing is actually interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was then always running on Spring, maybe starting some kind of not Tomcat, but what was it called? Jetty.
Mm-hmm.
Jetty as a web server, and then running things on that. It was always a bit the leaner approach, especially with running 20 services on one machine.
Mm-hmm.
I always preferred that approach instead of having one JBoss and deploying all the ERs into that.
Yeah, I also did. I had one with Docker. Docker changed everything, because in Docker, what I remember, what I did a lot is I had base images with JBoss, Glassfish, OpenLiberty, and they were more or less hard coded. So they were in Docker Hub. And I just extended from the image and just put the war, which was tiny. It was always less than 1 megs because everything was on the server. And this was crazy fast. So I had multiple JBosses on my machine. And I measured the overhead. So it's like the JBoss maybe is like 60 megs RAM overhead or at most. So it was never an issue for back then. And this was the difference. So I think since 2005, I also never run multiple applications inside one JBoss. This has lots of downside, because you have monitoring issues. No isolation is like class loading leaks. It is too complicated and too dangerous, and you save, as I said, 60 megs per instance. This the thing.
Yeah. Docker would have been a great thing. We never adopted Docker at this point because we built our own orchestrator to deploy all that software, because we had like 20 or 30 services. We need to manage them across a fleet of 10 servers. So we built our own distribution mechanism, and then it worked. And it was like, if we're now switching to Docker, we need to rewrite everything. That's why we never changed. And then I left the company in 2014, and I think they're still running on the same tech. And then I moved to another company, and I had to use OSGi, which was like,
okay,
hate it.
What I wanted to ask you is why you didn't look at back then Juice. I was interested a bit at Juice, like dependency injection framework from Google, tiny one with @inject or similar stuff. Was this not an option, or you had so many XML services already, or XML Bean, so let's call it Spring services already, that you said, okay, it is not worth migrating?
I think Juice was used in something for some reason, but we have a Spring, and we didn't do that much XML because the Spring was also able to do annotations.
Okay, cool. So then it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, you could do all of the factories, and the factories in Spring could also be in Java classes, the annotations. So, and that's why I'm not a Quarkus fan. I love reflection, so I did a lot of stuff using reflection.
Okay. So you're that guy. So in right now, there is no more reflection in my projects, but I love reflection as well. So I mean, you can do amazing things with reflection, but in I've spent time in mostly boring projects, so mostly database CRUD, more or less, and then you don't need reflection basically. So it's not like it's a solved problem. So but
in the applications themselves, there was also not that much reflection. But as I said, I was the framework guy.
Yeah.
So I built the tooling that was using reflection to make lives easier of the developers.
Good we talk, because there's could be interesting use cases with reflection and annotations for CDK, right? So I'm just saying, so maybe someone listens and very cool. As a cliffhanger, you are the maintainer of CDK, the open source, which is incredible, I would say. This is Cloud Development Kit at AWS. Okay, OSGi. So you switched to OSGi. What was your honest impression of OSGi?
I never really liked it because it was weird to configure, I think, and the class loading, the scoped class loading was always like, I don't get it and I don't like it. And this company built their own application server based on OSGi, and was like, no, can we please just switch to Spring or JBoss or whatever that is used by other people? And at the same time, I had to use OSGi with my private projects when working with OpenHub, the home automation platform, which was also using OSGi. And it was like, can we please get rid of the interesting piece of software?
I asked, so cautious how you like OSGi, because I don't like OSGi at all. I think OSGi solves problem if you build platforms, could be, but I have no interest using OSGi in applications or business application or whatever. And this was always my opinion, and I got lots of Twitter hate mail or whatever. It's like how you can be against modularity and you don't get architecture because if you don't like OSGi, you don't like modules, and discussion like that. And remember, there was some hardcore OSGi fanboys on Twitter. If I mentioned something like I don't use module in my projects, not even without mentioning OSGi, I still got, tweets, why you can say that, and OSGi is useful. So they were always, took it personally. But what it started with the manifest, it was crazy to write you couldn't write the manifest by hand. Yeah. It was like, it has to be formatted in a specific way. This was already crazy. And in Java, at conferences back then, everyone talked about modularity and OSGi. And no one was able to do that because, even to load a log framework or Hibernate, you had to apply tricks like body class loader or whatever. So, hey, come on, you could do this, but it doesn't work, right? And the end of the story was, I remember the Rod Johnson at WJAX conference in Munich had a keynote, and it say OSGi is like the German Volkswagen GTI, is nimble and fast. And I say, what? And this is why this I in OSGi is a small cap. And I so maybe, and like 2 or 3 months later, there was an announcement of the server side Spring doesn't do OSGi anymore. It's way too complicated. So okay, now we have it, right? So and in Java we have now modules, JPMS. I don't use them either because my service is so small that there is no need to modularize without these services. But interestingly, right now I spend lots of time with automation with Java and CLI, and I'm thinking about introducing modules, JPMS, so the Java modules, to have like pluggable scripts or whatever. So this is my thinking right now. But OSGi, I think I never. There was no interest using OSGi back then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I get the idea, but as you said, now with microservices, you don't need it. For the automation platform, I think it was a logical way because now all the integrations to different vendors could bring their own dependencies, not interact with each other, don't influence each other or break each other. But it was so complicated to get it working and to build your own manifests that I'm like, I think a better UX would have helped OSGi to be popular because I think the idea was not that bad, but it was just not usable.
And the most interesting part, Eclipse was told to be, the OSGi platform, and OSGi didn't manage to reload a plugin. You had to restart the entire Eclipse. You say, come on, if you are the reference platform, at least your IDE should be able to to reload a plugin without restarting. And this was the. So interestingly, NetBeans had far better module system based on service loader in Java, which was the standard, and it worked actually really well. And I also use it in projects, still use it from time to time. Service loader is the Java way to load XML parsers, whatever. So it's like you have a file with the interface name and the content of the file is the implementation done. This is the service loader. So it's available since JDK 1.6 and works perfectly. Are you still with the company with OSGi?
Sorry?
You are still working for the company with OSGi?
No, I was there only for 1.5 years.
Okay.
And then, I decided to do my own company, do consulting, because with the bank and with that company, I helped both companies to move to AWS. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, so it was both on-prem and then AWS. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm good at moving stuff to AWS. So that's why I built my own company, helping people move to AWS.
And you still have the company? So this is
So I'm still self-employed so it's 10 years anniversary this year in migrating and consulting on AWS topics. So that's what I'm doing for a living for 10 years.
So what's the name of the company? And
it's Taimos.
Taimos?
Taimos. Taimos.
Taimos. Taimos.
Yeah. And that's what I'm doing for 10 years now, helping customers to AWS in an automated, scripted way, obviously, and not clicking around in the console. And with that switch in AWS and serverless, for me, I was not using Java that much in the past time, but still good to know all the details because a lot of things is coming from the Java world. So if you know Java, it's like, I get why you're doing that.
Okay. That's interesting. Didn't you that you have a company which focuses on migration? What's the name? What does it mean? Taimos? Is it a name? Is there something? Is there a meaning behind?
There was a meaning behind. It was founded 10 years ago and 20 years ago as a side gig and building software for BlackBerries at that time. So there was no smartphones and iPhones. It was only BlackBerries, and we built some enterprise software for that. Obviously built on JBoss and all the stuff, and the BlackBerry itself was also Java apps. But then, it never worked. But the company was still around, and it didn't do anything. So I used that company for then my AWS endeavors. Mm-hmm. That's why it's there, but it doesn't have a meaning anymore.
Very good. So if someone hires Taimos, what do you usually do? So there's like legacy project and you try to migrate to AWS. This is what you're doing. Because I'm doing the same actually. Not only that, but I get lots of requests to help us to migration to AWS. So I help them. So I'm just curious what you are doing. And
so either migrating or building new. Mm-hmm. So mostly it's companies that already have a footprint on-prem. Mm-hmm. But then it's about migration, and sometimes it's migrating the application. Sometimes it's like, it's so old, let's rebuild it in AWS instead of migrating the application. Or nobody at a company anymore knows what this application is doing or how it is built. So let's rebuild it in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And the focus is regulated industries. So it's mostly banks, insurances, companies like that. So also the focus on compliance, governance, regulations.
ISO, C5.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff.
So if there's a bank listening, or I don't know, an healthcare provider, they can hire you and you will help them with the migration, right? Or
exactly.
Yeah, very good. So we put the name of the company to the show notes, and after the talk you will use a little bit more Java again. So this would be also great. Now, what are your typical AWS services you are using?
So whenever possible, I try to go with the serverless stuff. So Lambda, step functions, API gateway, DynamoDB, that ecosystem.
Code pipeline, code build as well?
Sometimes, but mostly in the direction of GitHub Actions or GitLab pipelines. But also build something. So for example, I help build a lot of the stuff in the CDK pipelines using code pipeline. So I'm definitely using that too. And then if serverless is not meeting all requirements, then trying to use ECS Fargate, which is also kind of serverless, but still containerized. And trying to avoid virtual machines.
And Kubernetes?
No, for me, mostly Kubernetes is a great solution, but the problem doesn't exist. So
I have exactly the same opinion. So I was already cautious with Kubernetes because a lot of Kubernetes fanboys. And Kubernetes for me on premise is great. I mean, on premise you can you don't have anything, so you could create like your orchestrator. What you did with the what was the name? The dwarf, not dwarf, Dwallin.
So my tooling, Dwallin.
Dwallin, yeah, exactly. So orchestrator or small services, or usually if this is bigger, so you can use OpenShift or Kubernetes, and you have your own cloud on premise. What I don't what I don't get at all is I just repeating because we had a chat on this podcast several times, but I mean. What happened is AWS was first, and they had already a cloud which was perfectly usable for Java back then. And then Google saw that, and they open sourced the Borg, which became they didn't open source Borg. They rewrote Borg to become Kubernetes. And then Kubernetes was very popular because developers liked Google back then. And AWS saying, fine, if you like Kubernetes, so here is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes on AWS runs on top of AWS. So you have basically managed two clouds, which are more or less independent from each other. So, and you see this, you're a CDK guy, right? So there's CDK, you will have to provision, the EC2s and the VPCs. And there is some CDK 8S. So there's a CDK for Kubernetes, which runs on top of the CDK, which I would say from the complexity perspective, I don't get it at all, I have to say. I said that you have to have really reasoned, like you build a product which runs on multiple clouds. This is what I get. You build a product, I don't know, insurance software, and we would like to certify it once, and then we can run it on multiple clouds. So I get it. So, okay, it runs on Kubernetes. So this is, from the compliance perspective, maybe better. But if you build a project, I cannot imagine any advantages having Kubernetes. So I would always, for instance, on AWS, prefer using ECS. So I
think that's exactly the thing. So Kubernetes makes sense if you're running on Google Cloud. It makes sense if you're running on-prem because it's easier than running Docker run on multiple computers. But if you're at another cloud provider that has a native container platform, use that. I think Massimo from AWS once put it really great. There's a difference in running in the cloud or on the cloud.
This is great. Exactly. This is actually a great saying. In the cloud or on the cloud, you would like to decouple from the cloud or are using the cloud, right? Exactly.
And ECS and serverless is running in the cloud. And Kubernetes is if you want to run on the cloud but be able to move, then you're running on top of the cloud and building your own cloud, your own APIs, and that's when you're running Kubernetes. And as I don't want to run on the cloud, but in the cloud, I'm not using Kubernetes.
Exactly. Very good. So, you already answered this because I'm also use only serverless because my thinking is if you go to the cloud, you have to get the maximum benefit of the cloud. Otherwise, we can stay on premise. There is no reason to go to AWS, except you would like, to focus more on business logic and forget about the infrastructure. And then the only way to go is serverless. So anything else doesn't make sense. So I would say try serverless first. If it doesn't work, then let's take a look at ECS or EC2 machine could make sense from time to time, from cost-wise or whatever your specific requirements. So you can have minimal operating system. It could make sense. But you have to have reasons, and reason is usually in the cloud is money, because from scalability or compliance could also be, right?
Yeah, but especially compliance for me is the main reason to use serverless. Because so what's your patch management process? Yeah, I don't need one because I don't manage the hardware. So what virus scanner are you using on your servers? I don't have servers.
Exactly.
So a lot of the compliance questions just go out of the window if you're using serverless.
And this is exactly, I was always too lazy to document. So this is why, or write architecture documents. So I use, for instance, JBoss back then in Java E. And I say, okay, we're using Java E, the APIs. There is no specific patterns. We use whatever was meant to use, and there's nothing to document because I just pointed to existing documentation and we are set, Or if I had the need to implement an factory decorator adapter, so I used whatever was described in the Gang of Four book and just pointed to the pattern and say, here's your factory, and I don't have to describe it again. So, with serverless, it's even more extreme because, for instance, maybe in Java we have GraalVM. This is like what GraalVM does. It compiles Java to a native image. I never used that as in the cloud, because if I would do this, I would be in charge of the image. So I will have, decompile the image. I need a pipeline. I have to patch it. Instead, what I do is say, hey, Amazon, give me the latest Corretto, which is Java 25, and they patch it for me. And the cool story is now I don't have to describe the patch strategy anymore. I don't have to describe the entire process, and I'm good. And recently I helped with ISO process 27, and lots of the annex of the rules. You can just say, okay, happens in the cloud. I don't have anything with. I'm actually serverless. You are almost certified per default, right? Because what you only have to do is focus on your business logic, and anything else, encryption, whatever, it just happens, right?
Yeah. I will definitely point to exactly that second of the recording to some of my clients that are using serverless, that are using Java, but are using GraalVM and Quarkus to be faster and more modern, but are like, but now you're in charge of everything.
Yeah. And if you use GraalVM and Quarkus, it is even worse. When they have to use, they have to use Mandrel because it comes from Red Hat. GraalVM is from Oracle. And the question is, if something breaks in GraalVM, I don't think any of us can fix it. So you can, because this is a complex technology, and GraalVM doesn't even run faster. What GraalVM does, it starts faster. So it means if I'm using Amazon Corretto on Lambda, it will run faster because Corretto optimizes on the fly, and GraalVM optimizes once. And I don't know whether you are aware of SnapStart. And what SnapStart does is, on Lambda, it can freeze the entire Quarkus, and it starts under a second. So I would say so what I tend to do is to build lambda huge lambda, several hundred Java classes in a Quarkus, and it starts without any optimization under 3 seconds, which is good enough. And if the cold start problem is a problem, what we do, we buy provision concurrency, This is for an enterprise, is like $15 a month, and the second cold start is rare, and so it means the cold starts problem in enterprise is not really one, and you can save a huge amount of money and headache just by using the how to call it, the default way of provisioning Lambda, right?
Yeah, exactly. But they're so big fans of, I need to run my own image and whatever. Yeah, but now it's a custom runtime and you're in charge of all the compliance.
Exactly. And how to debug it, how to whatever. So I would do this only if on premise. So different story. Also on the podcast, we migrated from JBoss to Quarkus and GraalVM on OpenShift on premise, and this was a huge success. Because GraalVM consumes significantly less memory, so you get more density on premise, which made absolute sense. On AWS doesn't make any sense because in order to make Quark or Java run good on Lambda, you will at least need one CPU. And one CPU means you have to buy 1.8 gigs of RAM, 1769 megs of RAM. Yeah. And Quarkus consumes maybe 100 megs. It means you have far more memory that you can actually consume with Lambda. So any memory optimization doesn't make any sense on AWS.
Yeah,
pretty cool. So and we are actually using Java to save money because Java is very fast, and if you do something in Lambda, you save money. And cold start with Quarkus is less for a problem. So Quarkus or Micronaut optimize everything in advance, and other frameworks are not that suitable for Lambda. So this is the finding.
Yeah.
As a cliffhanger, at least, you should, because I have to reinvite you back, to talk more specifically about CDK and how CDK happened. So how you got involved to the CDK project, Cloud Development Kit.
Yeah, so in 2018, 2019, there was a team at AWS building that. And they was like, yeah, you're doing a lot of CloudFormation and you're doing a lot of infrastructure as code. Do you want to try that out? So I tried it out. I was like, yeah, that's great. I really love that. I don't want to write JSON or YAML, so I can write TypeScript in that case. And yeah, I got involved in the project, used it, did a lot of contributions in the early days, building the instance.
What was a typical contribution? Is it like small things or more architectural things? Because, yeah.
Some architectural things, some discussions with the team. So, for example, I built the L2 construct for the EC2 instance, even if I'm not using EC2 instances. I built the AppSync implementation in CDK, so things like that. And then a lot of, again, being the framework guy, underlying stuff like merging objects in CDK and some asset subsystem stuff. So more like, yeah, the hidden stuff that makes it nice. And then that shifted in the last years from code contributions to more back channel, talking to the team, helping them prioritize, bringing the voice of the community to the team, and now organizing the open source work that is happening around that from outside AWS, like our community library. Now we started CDK Terrain, which is the successor of CDK for Terraform. After HashiCorp dropped that. So it's now more organizing and community work in the CDK ecosystem.
I had also some chats, but I don't know whether it was CDK. It was also open source. Okay, this is open source. It's okay. We have to be careful with the open source in AWS because my clients are paying, lots of money to AWS and for running their services. And I would see CDK as an enablement. It enables, clients to get more. This is like, I would say, one of the convenience features of AWS. Okay, you can pick CDK and you have infrastructure as code. And by the way, CDK is even better for compliance, right? Because if you get audit and you don't, without CDK is hard to imagine because what you will have to do to document, what you clicked or whatever, and hope that you didn't forget anything. And with CDK, you have the entire infrastructure on your disk, so you can review the cloud infrastructure by looking at the source code. Exactly. And I told to the AWS team is like, look, you're right, this is open source, but the problem is if I go to my clients or big clients and I say, look, we can contribute back to open source to CDK, they say we pay already, I don't know how much. So I mean, at least they could fix the bugs. So I get it, but it's strange, a little bit different open source than it was before, because usually open source was associated with free services. And you cannot use CDK outside AWS, right? So if someone contributes to CDK, what it means is it helps AWS to be more successful. So what I would expect that AWS is more interested and has a reward system for the contributors, because this helps AWS to be more successful. So this would be or sponsor the projects or whatever, right? So this could work. Let's say one thing could be that AWS says, okay, we don't know really what the community needs, so we will help the community to build the right stuff, and we sponsor that, right? This would be sponsored open source like this, right?
Yeah, but we all know that AWS and open source is an interesting relationship.
Yeah.
So there was also a lot of discussions in the CDK if it should be a product with source available or if it should be really an open source project. Yeah, I think that's always swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
So
I get it, and I also, I mean, I have no problem contributed if it helps me to in current projects, because why not? I mean, before I do a fork, I will contribute back. So if there's, of course, but if I would tell my clients, hey, there is an infrastructure as code, and we can, contribute something back, then I say, I mean, we're already paying for AWS. What are you talking about, right? This is like
I get it from a client perspective. For me as a consultant, it was more like, I can now build that feature for 5 clients, or I can contribute it to the CDK and just use it with 5 clients.
Exactly. This is also my reason. So this is why we had always a chat. I asked you about Java, and I never found time. But if there is something, I work with CDK all the time, and if something can be easily improved, I will do that. And I also started. It's called constructions.cloud. It is like I'm extracting more and more examples from my commercial projects to there. And it's exactly the same reason what you did. It's okay, because if their new client happens, I just fork, the template, and I can update all the dependencies and improve it a little bit more. And this is why I don't have to spend time, because otherwise, without open sourcing, I mean, what GitHub is great at is more like a portal or a dashboard of stuff which is useful to me. So this is how I see GitHub. So, and if I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't find, the templates on my hard disk. So it's harder to find. And GitHub is like an index for me. Say, hey, cool, this project. And I'm forced a little bit more to write a little bit nicer README and document it for me. And if someone would like to use it, just go ahead, right? So this is my attitude, exactly. my stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it's a way to reuse code instead of just writing it for one customer.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. So we're perfectly aligned. Yeah, from a consulting perspective, great, but from client's perspective is also understandable.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, cool. So what I suggest is that the next time we will discuss CDK in depth, and maybe I can get some ideas what I could contribute or what I could use, because what I'm interested is I use Java all the time with CDK. So all my projects are Java CDK, and all serverless is completely Java. And huge benefits, I have to tell you. It is actually, if you do CDK with Java and frontend with Java, frontend, I mean business logic with Java, not frontend, it works perfectly. And if we go into the depth, maybe we should start next time with, CloudFormation, the API surface, and what CDK is, what happens behind the scenes, and have an episode how CDK works. And maybe we get more contributors, and maybe I get some ideas what I could do to promote Java more on CDK.
Sounds perfect.
Super cool. Taimos, right? So if someone in meantime would like to hire you and steal your vacations, so Taimos, and and you get more contracts.
Perfect. Thanks.
Where people can find you? What is all you? I will also put it to the show notes, and companies, social media, whatever you have.
Yeah. So basically, it's Taimos as the company. There's a YouTube channel where I'm posting some shorts, and mainly
is it also Taimos,
LinkedIn.
The YouTube channel?
It's also Taimos, and it's the Höger TN on LinkedIn. So just search for my name, Thorsten Höger, on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I think that's the main point of contact.
Yeah, and this is German. Thorsten is THORSTEN, and Höger is HOE. This is the easiest one, right? HOEGER, because the O umlaut with 2 dots, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I have always... So my name is a test case for data validation.
Perfect. So it was great to chat with you, and see you next time with CDK.
Yeah, thanks for having me.